I'm Martin Tyler, and you're listening to Harry Symeou.
Hey everybody, welcome back to the Chronicles of a Gooner, the Arsenal podcast, part of the 90 Min family. As ever, I'm your host, Harry Symeou. This is our season preview show, and joining me, well, there's nobody better than my good friend, esteemed journalist, producer, podcaster, whatever you want to call him, Mike Stavrou. Welcome back to the program, mate. It's been a few weeks. How are you?
It's been a long time, man. It's been a very long time since I've heard those dulcet tones of yours, Harry.
Well,
You gave me the big intro, so I've got to give you a bit of one back. But yeah, man, it's good to be back. It has been a long time. I've got a lot of stuff, I want to say that I've been sort of thinking about for a long time, but I've not had the outlet because I decided just to take a bit of a step back over the summer, have a bit of a time to relax, and now I see it's the week of the season. So it's exciting times now. We're officially back.
you do need that, don't you, over the summer? And one of my big regrets of the summer is that I haven't really had that. I kind of planned to at the start of the summer. I said to myself, I've been working really, really hard the past season. I was working days, nights, weekends. And I got to the point where towards the back end of last season where I started to feel a bit of burnout. Like I'm not going to lie, I did. And I kept saying to myself, over the summer, I need to have a break. Over the summer, I need to take some time out. And it just never materialized. And now I'm kind of like, shit, the season is just around the corner again, and it's all going to start again. So I think there's a real importance in taking a bit of time out. Do you feel better for it?
100%, man. I feel refreshed. I've still been working, but I've just sort of worked to my own pace and not tried to cram in too much stuff, because I think it's periods where, like, the end of the season, and like it's so much for people like us, and like when we work around the football calendar, it gets to that point where there's transfers, and then there's the end of the season, and then watching it as a fan as well on top of all that is hard. But then having to talk about it afterwards, like, I think that last week of the season, the last few games against Spurs and Newcastle took quite a lot out of me. So I thought, let's just have a break. But I'm back and I'm ready. Pre-season's been good. The signings have been good. Even though last time we were on here, people were having a moan up about the lack of signings, but I'm back, and the signings are here. So yeah, it's all positive, man.
Before we dive into some of the specifics, because we're going to talk about things like, our expectations in the Premier League this season, our expectations in the Europa League, who we think might be the player of the year, who do we expect to have maybe a breakthrough season. We're going to get into lots of different categories as we kind of build up towards the start of the Premier League campaign, which is just days away now. But in terms of the summer overall, because we haven't spoken for a few weeks on this show, what have you made of Arsenal's transfer window so far? How would you rate it out of 10? And just basically talk to us a little bit about your general feelings on the window.
Yeah, I think I go back to that last one we did, and at that time, I think it was just before we signed Fabio Vieira, or just after. So it was Vieira, Marquinhos, and Turner. I think those were the sort of main signings we'd made. So at that point, I think it was fair enough to question, why is it slow? We know what we need. Why have we not got it? And I think we both said at the time, let's have a patience, let's give them the opportunity to do so, because there was players on internationals, which obviously slows things down because you can't get in contact with them as you need them. They're on their holidays, and people think it's excuses, but that is how it works. You need to have open lines of communications between all parties, and if one of them parties are not available for whatever reason, it will slow things up. So obviously Arsenal did have their targets. They did have the ones that they wanted to bring in, and we know Jesus was a top priority, and that's come in. So if I look at the window overall, I think at the moment we're at I'm not going to go too high. I'm going to go 7.5 out of 10, and there's a few reasons for that. So I think incomings, all of them so far have been great. There's one question mark over Fabio Vieira that I have, and that's just because I've not seen enough of him. I don't really know much about him, and given the outlay that we spent, same fee there or thereabouts as Zinchenko, we don't really know what we're getting for that sort of money. But we do know with Zinchenko and we do know with Jesus. I think Marquinhos and Turner, they go into different categories because one's for the future and one's a sort of backup goalie, so they can be compartmentalized a bit. But in terms of the incomings overall, like, I'm very happy. We've brought in experience. We've brought in players with a winning mentality, Premier League proven. So I think those are the right direction. I think where my sort of question marks lie a little bit is over the outgoings. I think obviously this has to be, you have to take it in context with how difficult the pandemic and other world factors have played a part in teams out of the Premier League not being able to sign players and not having as much money to do what they need to do. So I think, a few years ago, sales like Torreira, who had a decent spell at Fiorentina, would have been much easier. And I think he would have gone there easily, and that would have been done months ago. But it just so happens that the sort of profile and age of player that we're looking to get out, teams are not going to make much money off them if they decide to sell them on. So the player that we did sell really easily was Guendouzi. We sold him early on because he's at the right age, and people know that clubs know that if they buy him, it's an investment, and they can sell him on later on.
Did we get enough for him though?
Well, that's the question, isn't it? And I think we clearly have a good relationship with Marseille because we've just sent Nuno Tavares there. So maybe it's a part of that, wanting to keep them sweet for future loan transfers. I do think we could have got more, but I think there's always that thing with Guendouzi, it's the attitude, and I think there will be certain things with a player that will make them slightly less desirable. So I'm not really sure how many other clubs would have taken a punt on him, but obviously because he was at Marseille for a year and they knew him, they probably, obviously they thought that they could circumvent that in some way or, accept that in some way. So that's the outgoings. Obviously, I'm frustrated. Like Leno looks like we're going to get about 8 million. That's, you'd like a bit more, but for a goalkeeper of his age, that's fine. And then in terms, the other sort of section of it that I was thinking of was that I think we're just a few shy. I think we need a central midfielder to replace or provide competition for Granit Xhaka in that advanced sort of number 8 role that he's playing right now. We'll talk about how Zinchenko affects that later on. But I think we need a midfielder, and I think we can do with another attacker, a wide player to sort of provide competition, because I think we're a little bit light if one of the key players gets injured. But overall, like 7.5 at this stage with still, a good month to go, I think it's pretty good.
I think hearing yesterday that following Balogun is close to leaving the club on loan as well has kind of given me more confidence that Arsenal are going to go out and bring in an attacker, because we were only one injury away from him being the backup striker. And I'm not saying we're going to buy a like for like a centre forward, a nailed on centre forward, but I do think him moving on as well clears that space for us to potentially go and get another one. We know that outgoings have to happen before we're going to move forward in terms of further recruitment. I expect Arsenal between now and the window to bring in one more. We can have a debate back and forth.
Is that inside info, Harry, or is that just
no? It's just my opinion.
Okay.
No inside info, and even if it was inside info, they'd probably shoot me down for giving it if they were giving it to me, but they're not. Unfortunately, despite what people say in the comments, I'm not on the Arsenal payroll. I don't have any sort of line into the club. It's literally just my opinions, which are based on what's out there for everybody. So I think one more will come in. I think that's the most likely outcome between now and the end of the window. But people moving on is something that we really need to do. I'm just conscious of time because I want to dive into the new season. Ultimately, that's what we're here to do. But just quickly, your thoughts on Lucas Torreira, who this evening is being heavily linked with a move away to Galatasaray. Now, I'm really surprised that somebody who's been talking about the fact that he's homesick and all of this stuff is now going to pick up, get his stuff and go and join a football club that are in a part of the world that is totally different to the place he claims he's missing, totally different to Italy, an environment in which he grew as a player and is very, very used to. This just is weird to me. I look at this and I feel a bit of sadness because when we signed Lucas Torreira, being a big Serie A fan, I was really excited about that deal. I really, really was. I thought this is a guy who can, really develop here, who can be one of our key players in the future if he hits the ground running. But from the beginning, Mike, it was just complaint after complaint after complaint. I don't want to live here. And I get that, maybe he didn't sort of fall in love with England. It's an easy place to fall out of love with, let's be honest. But at the same time, he keeps talking and he's not helping himself. And even after a very successful season in Italy last season with Fiorentina, nobody's willing to cough up 6-7 million euros for him. What's your take on Torreira and the future of the Uruguay?
I mean, yeah, it seems a bit of a running theme with some of our players, Harry, and it's a sort of typical, of that signing and the era that we talk about, because we talk about Guendouzi. I think he was bought in the same window as Torreira, and then I think Lena was also bought in that window under Emery. So these are all players that we're trying to ship out. So it's almost like the last of the old guard that we need to get rid of before we can completely 100% move on. And it's just that type of player that if they're unhappy, they'll come out and say it, which just makes their value plummet. Like Torreira's come out and said he doesn't want to be at Arsenal pretty much, and he wants to move. And I remember him talking about why the Fiorentina move didn't work out, and he said there were certain people that made it difficult. And when you talk so openly, play it. Number one, your value plummets because all of a sudden the buying club know that your club desperately want to get rid of you and you're transfer listed. So that already gives you a disadvantage as a selling club. And then it also makes the club that are buying you think, well, what's going to happen if you get unhappy here? You've already been unhappy at your old club. You had a loan spell at Atletico Madrid, which didn't quite work out. And it's not worked out at Arsenal. So why am I going to take a risk on you? I think that's how I kind of read it. But, if we can get rid of him and get a fee, I think it's, it's not ideal, but how many players have we let go on free? How many players have we had to pay up their contract? So even getting something out of it is a net positive. It's not a big net positive, but it's better than negative.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay, look, it's taken us 12 and a half minutes, but let's dive into the preview of the upcoming season. And it's a season, I think it's fair to say, it is being billed as one that we can take a lot of hope going into. It's one that we look at in a positive light at the moment, based on what I would say is the progress we've seen over probably the last 18 or so months now at Arsenal Football Club. What are your expectations with regards to the Premier League? Because obviously that's your bread and butter. We know that we narrowly missed out on a top 4 finish last season. And, you could argue that would have potentially accelerated the process further. Yeah. We didn't quite make that. But now, how are you feeling about the new campaign? And where do you think Arsenal should be aiming to finish? Wait. Not just aiming. Where do you think they should be aiming to finish? And where do you think they will finish?
Yeah. You know what? I heard an Edu interview, and I think you went over it as well on here, so everyone be fully aware. But he was saying, top 4 is not enough. And I wonder if those comments will sort of come back to bite him a little bit, because do you remember, Harry, you always used to say this, but I think it might have been 2 years ago now, but someone asked him what's Arsenal's target and he refused to say.
Yep.
And I think that's important. I don't think you should put that sort of stuff in the media, because it's always just going to come back to bite you. Because if things go wrong, if we get loads of injuries, if we go on a bad run of results and the pressure's ramping up and the top 4 doesn't happen, you're ultimately just going to make yourself look a bit silly. So I don't think them statements are kind of good. And I don't think Arsenal should be looking to compete for the title right now. I don't think we're near it. I think Man City and Liverpool are another level. And it's at least, another few years before we even think about that. So I think they should be aiming to push for 3rd. I think 3rd, if you sort of land there and you're sort of a bit above 4th and 5th, and you can avoid that sort of last gasp top 4, battle that we always seem to bottle in the last few years. I think if you can sort of go for that, you're absolutely laughing. I mean, imagine us going into the last week of the season already securing top 4. And we could have done it last year if we won our games, but we didn't. So I think that should be the. Go on, you wanted to butt in there. Go on.
I was just gonna say, like, I get what you're saying about Edu, sort of maybe running a bit of a risk by kind of saying what he said.
Yeah,
I don't really think he can win in this situation, because if you think back to the start of last season, he was heavily criticized for the fact that he didn't give an objective away. Now, I wonder if a lot of that criticism was fueled by the fact that he gave that interview after we lost our first 3 games. The mood was very toxic. The mood was very kind of agitated. I don't know how to describe it, but there was a lot of ill feeling around Arsenal at that point. So him sort of refusing to give an objective, I know, was probably the right thing to do. And I said at the time it was, but it did antagonize those people, didn't it? That were already kind of pushing for him and Mikel Arteta to be given their marching orders. I think if he says that top 4 is the target, which I think is the target, then he could be perceived to lack ambition. I think a lot of Arsenal fans would dress it up that way if he was to say that. So I think he kind of has to say that overall, our overall ambitions and goals are to win the biggest things in football. I think when you're a club of Arsenal's size, you can't say anything but that. I fear that people will take that too literally and feel as though he was talking about this upcoming season, when actually it wasn't.
He probably wasn't. Like
no, it was meant. It was meant,
generally,
as a more broader general concept. But yeah, I think it's a really hard thing. But I think with Edu, what I like about him, and I don't know if you agree or disagree, feel free to jump in, is that I like the line of communication that he has with the fans. And at times you will get situations and instances where maybe he crosses the line with regards to what he says, what he should and shouldn't say. But I quite like the fact that there's a lot more transparency and we're not having to second guess every single move. But with that means that people are going to hold you accountable to your word, and there's not going to be much wiggle room.
Yeah, but what I wonder, Harry, is like, so obviously the overall objective for a club this size should be to battle for titles and stuff. But, I think that's just a thing you say. And it's just, if you lessen them publicly, you sort of, you look a bit silly as well. So it's a double-edged sword. But what I was going to ask you is, what do you think their actual ambition is? Because I think we both said last season they were aiming for top 4. Sorry, they were aiming to be competitive for top 4. I don't think top 4 was the actual objective based on where they were. But what do you think their objective is this season?
It's got to be Champions League qualification.
Yeah.
However that is achieved, it can be achieved via the Europa League. It can be achieved via the Premier League. I think that I'm seeing in the chat as well, a few people are kind of looking at this in a little bit more of an analytical way, i.e. how many points should Arsenal be looking to pick up in the Premier League this season? Chris Chan says 80 plus points as the goal. Well, if you think about last season, we managed 69. And I think when you take into consideration that we lost 13 games, which is just way too much, I think 80 is a realistic target. But 80 is much more difficult to achieve than it looks on the surface, because Chelsea, who finished 3rd last season, only managed 74. If you'd have got 80 points last season, you'd have still been 12 points behind Liverpool in 2nd. So I think maybe the target needs to be a bit lower. I think maybe if I'm coming up with a target myself, I'm probably looking at 75 points. And I think there's a good chance, given the competition in the division, that with 75 points, you get into the Champions League. I think the minute you start going and I think the reason people are coming up with 80 and maybe slightly above that is because they're looking at the tallies put down by Liverpool and Manchester City.
Yeah.
To get 92 and 93 points in a Premier League season, as those two did last year, is unprecedented. Okay, Manchester City won the league with 100 once. There was that season where it was 98, 97. But these two are so superior in terms of the level and the gap between themselves and everybody else to everybody in the Premier League over the last decade, I would argue. So I think 80 is slightly too high. In terms of a points tally, where are you kind of sitting?
Well, if you say 75, right? So we got 69 last year. If you say 75, that's 2 more wins. And you think about the run-in where let's not talk about the beginning of the season because that was just I think a freak thing.
Yeah.
If we talk about the run in and some of the losses we had there that could have been avoidable, Crystal Palace, Newcastle, and Spurs, I think were the 3 games that we should have done more. Brighton as well. I think if we won 2 or 4 of them, we get into the Champions League. So do I think that's achievable this season? Absolutely, because as I said earlier, we've added experience to our team and we've added winning mentality to our team. And that's in key positions. Up front, we didn't have that. So I think, 75 is probably about what I would go for. And 75 last year gets you 3rd. So I think that's what we should be aiming for. What I think we will aim for and where I think we will finish is 4th. I think if we're looking at it again, it's between Man City and Liverpool. I mean, at the moment, toss a coin between those two because we saw them duke it out in the Community Shield and they were pretty level. Chelsea, I think, will drop out of the top 4 this season. I'm really not buying into it. I'm not buying into it. I think their business has been really slow. I think they've actually, I'm not sure if they've got worse, but they've definitely not got a load better because Antonio Rudiger was, unbelievable. One of the best defenders in the world last season, I think. So I think Kalidou Koulibaly is a good sign-in, but he's going to take a while to adapt. He's been playing his whole career pretty much in Serie A, so it's going to be a big adaptation period for him. And then Raheem Sterling as well. I think he's a good sign-in, but he's not, a world beater. And they've lost a number 9 in Lukaku, and they're not signed one. So Chelsea, I think, will drop out. So I think, unfortunately, I think Spurs will finish 3rd. It makes me sick to my stomach, but I think they have made smart signings. I don't think they've made signings that are world class, but when you do have world class players in Harry Kane and Son, I think you just need to supplement them. And 60 million on a sort of backup player in Richarlison signals their intent a little bit. And with a world class manager in Conte, of course, I think that will be the difference. So I think they will finish 3rd, and I think we'll be able to get 4th. I think the competition will be from probably the likes of West Ham more than Man United, I think. But Man United, if they can get it together and get a few more signings, they should be in around. So I do think 4th is where we'll finish.
Okay, so you think that's where we'll finish? So
yeah.
Okay, so position. I'm making notes of these so that we can look back at them at the end of the season. I think we'll finish 4th too. And in terms of points, I'm going to say that we should aim for, and I expect us to achieve, I'm going to say 74 points.
Mm-hmm.
Where are you going on this?
I'm going to go 72. I'm going to go 72. Slightly lower. I think we'll just about get there.
Just about make
but
it.
But it's not going to be comfortable. So like another win on top of last season, basically.
Okay, Europa League, obviously a big thing for us again because we're back in Europe after a season away from the competition completely. Some people suggested that maybe being out of Europe was actually a huge benefit to us because we were able to concentrate on games. I still felt at times, because of the way the fixtures worked out, we were at a disadvantage. I still felt at times that some of the players that we had to bring in when we had injuries to the first team were a little bit cold because they hadn't been playing any football, whereas the Europa League would have given them those opportunities. The Thursday, Sunday thing, it's not ideal, and even as a fan, it's a pain in the arse. Let's be honest about it.
Absolutely, yeah.
But it does mean that I get to go to football on the Saturday for work, and then I get to go to football on the Sunday, and then get out of the house. So there are positives to it as well. But yeah, I mean, expectations for the Europa League. I'm going to start on this, and I'm just going to go out and say it. I expect us to win it. I really do. I think we've shown in all the campaigns that we've been in the Europa League, with the exception of maybe one, that we, off the top of my head, that we are a really competitive force in that competition. We've been to the semi-finals on numerous occasions. We were beaten by Villarreal, obviously managed by Unai Emery. We were beaten by Atletico Madrid. We went to the final when it was played in Baku, and we got beaten by Chelsea. I think that Arsenal should be aiming to win the Europa League, and I think we will. Bold prediction.
Bold,
Normally,
yeah.
I'm a bit more safe in my predictions, but I think Arsenal can win the Europa League this season. What are your expectations of that competition?
I I think we'll sail through to the knockouts and probably through to the last 16 because I think we've got enough. I think we've got enough in that sort of backup team to be able to get there. Blitz through the group, which should be pretty easy. But where I think we'll struggle is in that latter stage of the season when we're going for top 4 and we've got to play a first string team in the Europa League and in the Premier League, because that sort of, after the last 16, the sort of quarterfinal round is where you need to, you can't really afford to rest players in the Premier League or in Europe. So, and to be honest, the reason I say this is because I think the backup is good. I think he has improved. I mean, just look at the sort of defense. I mean, the options we have there are great. Like, we don't have I don't know, first choice fullbacks, or what would have been last season first choice fullbacks, Tierney and Tomiyasu, in the team, and we don't have our centre back playing where he's usually playing, but we still look strong. So I think that it has improved in a way, and the Zinchenko signing gives us that sort of versatility and cover. But I think we're still lacking in terms of our midfield backups and in terms of our attacking backups. I think if Saka goes out, we've got Nicolas Pepe to come in, who is been far from convincing on the left hand side. We'll have Smith Rowe, but questions over his injury record, and then Eddie Nketiah, who has really improved his game, but if he's called upon to play in those sorts of games, how well can he do? So there's gonna have to be some sort of sacrifice, and I would prefer us to really go for the league, to be honest, Harry, because that is a sure way to do it. In an odd game, in a tournament game, anyone can win. So if it comes down to it and we're having to prioritize, I would go Premier League. So for that reason, I'm going to say quarterfinals. We're going to get to the quarterfinals and go out. Yeah, because you can get unlucky and draw a really good team in the quarterfinals or the semi-finals. But I just can't see us going all the way, because I think our squad is improved, but it's not quite there for me.
The lens I look at it through is that we can get through, and I think you touched on it just then, we can get through the vast majority of the Europa League, I think, at least the group stage, at least the round of 32, maybe even the round of 16, by making changes. So I don't think you come to that crossroad whereby you have to make a decision in terms of priorities until the second part of the season. And so for that reason, I think that we can manage the workload based on what we've got, as long as people stay injury free. I think when you look at the team now, Martinelli to Smith Rowe, is that a big difference in terms of their quality when they're both at full tilt? No, it's not.
Well, it's about fitness though, isn't it?
Yeah, it's about fitness. Well. That's exactly the point. It's about fitness. But in terms of quality, there's not a lot in it. On the right-hand side, I think Pepe can do a job in the Europa League. I think that Nketiah can do a job in the Europa League. I think that I'd hope that Fabio Vieira would be able to come into the midfield in an advanced position. I'd like to think that in the group stages, even somebody like Lokonga or Elneny could do a job in midfield. You could change the centre backs up. You could bring Tomiyasu in if Ben White's playing it right back on the left side. You could go Zinchenko or Tierney.
Is this in the knockout stages, though, Harry, or are you talking about the group stages? Because I think that there's a big difference.
I think the group stages for sure, and the knockout stages depending on who your opponent is.
Yeah, but that's the thing you don't know, isn't it?
No, exactly. But you need a bit of luck sometimes in these competitions. You need the luck of the draw, and obviously that plays a big part. Okay, so you say quarterfinals, I say winners. Player of the year. Who do you predict will come out as Arsenal's player of the year? Bukayo Saka obviously won it last year, fully deserved in my opinion, despite dropping off a little bit, I thought, at the back end of the season. Who are you looking at and almost expecting that from now?
Well, I'm going to be a bit left field, and I think the obvious choice is probably Saka or Jesus. But I honestly think Zinchenko, just because of how much he changes everything. And everything that we want to do as a team, everything Arteta wants to do tactically. And I know it's only pre-season, but we've seen it already, where in the last game, especially against Sevilla, a bit less against Chelsea, but when we see that sort of Pep Guardiola tactical, remake, basically Pep Guardiola version 2, Mikel Arteta, where remix, yeah, where it's the 2-3-5. So you got the 2 centre backs, the central midfielder, and the inverted fullbacks basically acting as centre mids, and you've got the 5 attackers. And I think there's not really another player in the team that would be able to do that sort of inverted left back role. And that's why I think he's just going to be huge for us. So even though he's not going to grab the headlines, he's not going to get the assists, he's probably not going to get the goals if he plays that sort of role. But what I think he does is just free up other players and just make us that more balanced and that much more, difficult really for opponents to work out. Because, Pep Guardiola's done it with City, and they are hard to stop. And just judging by, not only that, the sort of tactics, but talking about the sort of desire, the energy and everything we've seen in pre-season, I think that paired with the tactical flexibility is going to be a real winner for us. And also, if we don't decide to play that way and the team switches up a bit, he can play midfield. So I mean, there's not many players that are really that versatile to be able to play those positions. So yeah, I think he's going to be the one.
I'm going to go with Martin Odegaard. I think that he had a really good season last season overall. I think just like Saka, there were moments where, he was a little bit below the level that we know he's capable of. I think people forget, though, that was his first full season as an Arsenal player, first full season in the Premier League. Obviously, somebody who is young as well. I know that he's a bit older than some of the others, but he is someone who, I think people forget about his age because of how long he's been on the scene. It feels like yesterday that he joined Real Madrid as a 16-year-old, but actually it was quite a while back now. So I'm going to go with Martin Odegaard. I think the captaincy is going to give him a lift. I think for some players, it's a burden. For others, it's something that can help them take their game up to a new level, that added responsibility. His football intelligence is incredible. I think that he is very much Mikel Arteta's lieutenant out in the middle of the park. He takes instructions to people. He conveys those instructions to his teammates, and I think he carries them out to a T. I think he's going to have an amazing season, and he's got a top striker in front of him now to feed the supply to. So I'm going to go Martin Odegaard. Just quickly before we move on, what's your thoughts on him being named captain? Are you for it? Are you against it? What did you make of him being given the nod, essentially?
Yeah, 100% for it. I think, it wasn't a shock. We all knew it was coming because he was the one wearing it at the end of last season, when Lacazette wasn't in the team. So, I mean, it's great news. And yeah, I mean, he started it with lifting a cup. I mean, we're not Spurs. We're not going to celebrate winning like the Audi Cup or whatever that crap was that they won. But I mean, look, it adds to it. It helps the team bonding, and it, I'm sure for the fans in the stadium, it was a nice little end to a battering of Sevilla, which was good to watch. So yeah, I think he's been a leader really, and the captain in all but name for the last 6, 7, 8, 9 months since he's really broke into the first team and put his stamp on it. And I think he was the sort of natural fit because he captains his country. He's got that sort of steely resilience. He works hard, so he sets the example. In terms of his leadership, but in terms of how he, the amount of effort he puts in, and that gets everyone else up. So there's not really much else you want from a captain in terms of leading by example, but he also is vocal as well. So I think he's got the right balance. I think a lot of people were sort of saying, I wanted it to be Gabriel, I wanted it to be Ramsdale, but I think Odegaard is the natural fit for me, and I can definitely see why Arteta's done it.
You need a captain that's not in the past. You either looked at a captain and gone, I want my captain to be someone who plays on the edge, somebody who's a little bit of a hothead, somebody who's a little bit intimidating in the way that Patrick Vieira maybe was, or that Roy Keane was, or maybe John Terry was, he was not afraid to get involved in that sort of side of the game. But I think nowadays the whole mentality around captains has shifted. And I think you want somebody that you can trust implicitly to not let his team down. And I think that even when it's not really working for Martin Odegaard in terms of the threading passes through the eye of a needle and, maybe missing opportunities from the edge of the box, he still gives you the basics. He still gives you work rate. He still gives you effort. He still leads the press incredibly effectively. And he's not going to do something stupid, like lose his head and let you down and let
Who
your
does that
team
sound
down.
like, Harry? Talking about captains?
Well, yeah, I mean, yeah, Granit Xhaka, you know, I like Granit Xhaka. We've had this discussion over and over again. I think he gets a rough ride from a lot of Arsenal fans. I think he's one of the captains in the side anyway, regardless of whether he's wearing the armband or not. And I think when the documentary comes out later this week, people are going to see that. But you can't trust him 100% to not make a silly challenge, to not get drawn into an argument, to not lose his cool and cost you. And that's the harsh reality of it, isn't it?
Well, yeah. Well, I mean, it's literally when you were talking about what captains used to be, and you want someone who plays on the edge and someone who gives everything for the shirt. I mean, that is literally Xhaka. That is what he does. And when he did that Players Tribune interview, he was talking about I don't care if I get cards because I'm committed and I'm going to go in for that challenge.
Yeah.
And even though that is a it's debatable whether that's a good thing or not, but you can't fault his commitment. But
yeah,
you need your captain to be on the pitch, so you can't have someone that has a tendency to lose their head and going for challenges like that. The one thing I will say about Odegaard that he needs to improve on if he's going to lead the team is just I noticed quite a few games last season he went missing, and that's the last thing you want. Not missing in terms of stop running or anything like that, but he just faded away when games weren't really going our way. He wasn't the one to sort of grab it by the scruff of the neck and demand the ball every 2 seconds. But I think it's hard to pin the blame on him, for that completely, because I think that's a team thing. I think we struggled in losing positions last season. But what you want is someone to, when he is captain, someone to lead that charge and lead that sort of fight back. And that's the only thing I would say that I want to see from him now. He has taken on that extra responsibility.
That's where I think, though, as a team, we need a little bit more variety in our game. Because if we try and funnel everything through Odegaard, it's not long before people go, well, if you stop Odegaard, you stop Arsenal. And that's why it's so important that we've got alternative threats, and it's why I quite like the idea of this kind of shift in the formation where we do have those two midfielders that can get forward into those half spaces. It's not just about how it's not a number 10. Martin Odegaard doesn't play as a number 10. He will drift into that space. No. And he's a creative force, which leads to people labeling him as that. But him and Xhaka, if it is those two in the starting lineup, play in the half spaces. And I think we've been a little bit lopsided as a team for a number of seasons now, in that we've had certain threats on one side that we couldn't mirror on the other. And in order to maintain the defensive balance, sometimes we had to be a little bit more conservative on one flank. I want to see, with a little bit more stability, the ability to replicate the same on both sides. And that makes you, as a football team, very, very difficult to stop. And I think that's going to be key.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
No, I was going to say, I think my point was more about, Odegaard, like try not to go missing when it counts. And that's not saying that we funnel everything through him, but him just, lifting everyone and giving everyone that sort of, push that he needs to do as captain. And I think that starts with him. That starts with him, putting in those extra yards, like especially when we're losing, and really making sure that you're demanding the ball at every second and moving around the pitch and trying something different. Because I think that the thing that we really struggled last season is that we were so reliant on the same 11 that, when it got to that stage of the match when we were losing in the 60th, 70th minute, we didn't know how to do anything else because we didn't have any options from the bench to come on and change the game. But now we do. So I think that will be a key as well.
Yeah, I mean, we've looked at that team in pre-season, been quite happy with it, and often overlooked the fact that Tomiyasu's to come back, Kieran Tierney's to come back, Fabio Vieira will be in the picture at some point shortly, we hope as well, Emile Smith Rowe. And so when you think about it, there are more options now, probably still not quite enough, but there are alternatives, and we didn't necessarily have that at times last season. You'd look at the 11 and go, okay, that's all right to start the game with. Things wouldn't go our way, and you'd look at the bench and go, not really
not
sure
going to change.
Who can come on and change this?
Yeah.
Just before we move on, because this has been bugging me as well throughout the show, so I have to bring it up. Mike, our very own George Clooney lookalike here on the Chronicles of a Gooner, is modelling the Arsenal away shirt, the black shirt, the one that everybody loves, the one that everybody's been talking about, the one that everybody's gone and bought. It says, Russ says, sorry, in the chat, does anyone else think the stripes on the shoulders of the black away shirt should be gold? Yes. 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 How can all of the trimmings be gold and look so good, and then they've gone with grey Adidas stripes?
Oh, you don't have to have everything matching. You know, there's grey like specks here. You don't have to have everything gold.
I really like the shirt. I really do. But it's just I never really thought about that. It started bugging me at the start of the show. Then I wondered if you'd got some knockoff version from somewhere. And I thought, shall I ask him? I'll ask him off air. And then Russ brings this up, and it is bugging me. So
no, I don't agree, man. I think it's if it's gold on here as well, that's quite a large patch, and they're quite like big stripes. I think that makes it too much gold.
Can you ever have
also,
too much gold?
I think it's a bit of a bronzy gold as well. It's not like a proper like bright gold. So I think it'd just be a little bit too much. I like the grey because you get specks of grey in it, and it also means that if you're wearing it casual as well, you can mix in like grey trousers, and it goes. So you know, all purposes.
Our very own Gok1 here on the Chronicles. Let's move on. Let's talk about top scorer. I mean, the obvious choice here would be the Brazilian prophet that we signed from Manchester City. Do you think that Gabriel Jesus is going to be Arsenal's top scorer come the end of the season?
Yeah.
How many do you think he'll get in all comps?
All comp. I've not thought about all comps.
All right, go with Premier League.
Premier League. I think he's going to score about 17 goals. So that doesn't sound like a lot, but it's a big improvement on what we've had.
I think 4 that Lacazette got last season.
Yeah. I mean, big improvement. I think Saka was our top scorer on 11. Is that right?
Yep.
Yeah. So it's a big improvement on that, and you know, a few more goals in those games that I was talking about earlier. You know, is the difference. So it's not an overwhelming amount of goals, but I think it's gonna you know, give us a lot. And just to jump ahead as well, you know, with assists, I think he's gonna be most assists as well. Honestly, because I do. I think the way he plays, the way he drops deep and brings others into play, I think there's gonna be a menacing link up with him and Gabriel Martinelli, because what I was seeing a lot was Gabriel dropping deep and Martinelli running in behind. And I think when those two hit that, you know, spark and they really get it, I think that's going to be a devastating partnership. And if Martinelli can sharpen up that just a little bit more, that's going to be a sort of assist and goal duo that is going to absolutely bang next season. So I think, yeah, he's going to get both.
Okay, interesting. I'm going to put him for most assists, Gabriel Jesus. And I think that, you know, people have been almost obsessed by how many goals he's going to score. So obsessed by that they've maybe overlooked the fact that he can very much be a provider as well. So I agree with you on that. I think that's a really, really reasonable shout. I think it's a good shout. And so I'm going to jump on it. I'm going to steal it. I'm going to take it. I'm going to run.
Typical.
But top scorer, I'm going to go with Bukayo Saka. Now, I'll explain why. I think that obviously Bukayo Saka is someone that the Premier League knows very well. Okay, he's an England international. The spotlight is always on him, etc., etc. But I think that the dynamism, the tempo, and the aggression with which both Jesus and Martinelli play the game from the left-hand side is almost going to cause the type of chaos that will create more spaces for Saka to drift into from the right-hand side. I think that last season, Saka was seen as the main threat. Okay, every team we played against, let's do a job on Saka. Let's kick lumps out of Saka at every opportunity. And now you can't focus on him because there's other players that are capable of doing the damage. And I think that that's going to work in Saka's favor. I know that this is a bit of a left field shout. I know that, you know, if I was a betting man doing this, I'd back Gabriel Jesus. But there's just something inside me that says that Saka's come on another level. He is going to benefit from the fact that he's got much more mobility in and around him. I think that all of the focus, particularly in the early season, is going to be on Jesus. And I think that his movement is so sophisticated so excellent that he could potentially open doors for Saka to drift into the types of areas that he maybe wouldn't have had the opportunity to do with Lacazette up front, because Lacazette was unable to vacate his own position and move to the left, to the right. I think there'll be a lot more interchanging up front than we've seen in the past couple of seasons. I really do.
Yeah, no, that's a good shout, and I think that definitely the sort of vibrancy and the efficiency and the sharpness of how Jesus turns with the ball is, that's gonna hurt defenders, because you look at most like standard Premier League defenders, they're not going to be able to deal with that. They're not going to be able to deal with that sort of quickness of thought as well. So the sort of space that's going to create for the sort of we're looking at them as like inside forwards, Saka and Martinelli, which is what they basically will be now. Saka will play a bit wider, I think, but still he's going to get into those areas in the box as well. I can definitely see that happening, and it's it's just great to see, because I think we spoke a lot about having half the striker that we want in Aubameyang and half the striker that we want in Lacazette, and I think now we've got the complete striker. And I would just bring it up again that I said that I wanted Gabriel Jesus.
You did
way before the transfer window opened. I think we did.
You said it before there were any links. Let's be honest.
Yeah,
you did.
I just thought it was a good fit and at a good price. Just because, like, look, if we would have done what everyone wanted, and sorry chat, but probably about 99%, and signed a striker in January, how worse off would we have been now? I think it's obviously difficult to say, because it's it's speculation and sort of like us just guessing, but I think we'd be much happier paying 50 million or 45 million for Jesus rather than 70 million for Isak.
Oh God,
just based on how even Vlahovic. I think Vlahovic would have been a good signing, but if you ask me who I'd want for half the price, it'd be Jesus.
Yeah, I agree with that, and I have to give you credit. As I said, I'd tip my hat to you if I were wearing one. You called Jesus as a very good and viable option way before anybody else did. So fair play to you there. You got to get something right from time to time. Just circling back to the top scorer point, just very quickly. Another thing that I forgot to say is looking at the game at the weekend, and I know it's a preseason friendly and you can't always make your judgments based on that. The way that Bukayo Saka went and picked up the ball and took the penalty, I know he was the one that won it, but we saw it towards the back end of last season as well. We saw Saka take on penalty responsibility. That enhances my case, I think, for the idea of him potentially being the top goal scorer, because I think he'll be on penalties. And I think with the dynamism, with the pace, with the trickery, with the movement that we've got up front, you'd think, but then again, this is Arsenal and we don't seem to get them, but you'd think that we should, in theory, probably pick up more penalty kicks. And that could really aid his goal tally, couldn't it?
Yeah.
So, we'll see. Okay, next category. Who do you think is going to be Arsenal's breakthrough player this season? Now, when I say that, I don't mean some random 16-year-old kid that you've never heard of that's going to come through. Who's it going to be? What I mean is, which player in that Arsenal squad do you think is going to break through their current ceiling? Who do you think is going to go to that next level in the way that, going back to Saka, he did last season, where I thought, following the disappointment of the Euros, he really took it up a whole new level in the following campaign. Who is your breakthrough player for the 2022-23 season?
I've got so many that I think are going to do well, and I think I'm going to say your one.
Basis. Go on.
If I'm going to say your one, let me know, and then I'll say someone else. So I was going to say Martinelli.
Cool.
I'm going to say Martinelli. It's Martinelli your one?
I'll reveal in a minute. Go on.
It is, isn't it? But just watching Martinelli evolution over the last sort of year or so, because it wasn't that long ago. I was listening to his interview with Ian Wright, and he was talking about when he was on the bench and not playing, and he said he was like sad. And I for some reason in my head, I thought that was like years ago, but it wasn't. It was at the beginning of last season. So for him to go from that sort of disappointment, bitterness, for us saying as well, to be fair, we do get I have just got something right, but I do get a lot wrong. And I think I said at that time, he's not really deserving of a place in the team. He's not ready. He's not tactically mature. He was still, rushing things. He was just getting his head down whenever he got the ball and running at players. And I think his tactical evolution and maturity in the last 12 months has been unbelievable. The way that he's sort of really fitted into what is quite a rigid tactical system for such a young player, I think has been really impressive. And I expect that to go up a whole nother level this season. I'm hoping it will be adding goals to his game, because I think that's the number one thing. He creates chaos and he could gives defenders a tough time. But I think the number one thing you want to see is a bit more, assuredness in front of goal. And I'm hoping that's what we get. But if not, that, as I say, that link up with Gabriel Jesus is going to take Martinelli's game to another level, because he will have that consistent player to buzz off and link up with. And I think Lacazette sort of brought that out of him a little bit, but I think Jesus's link up is just at another level with Lacazette because of the speed that he can do it at. So yeah, I think he's going to explode this season 100%.
Yeah, I agree with that point as well about Lacazette. Like I did say at various points last season, and I stand by it, that Lacazette did a good job of facilitating the thriving of Saka, of Smith Rowe at times, of Martinelli at times, because of his link-up play. But it was almost like, and when I think about it now, I remember when I was like a lot younger than I am now, and I used to go to football, and we didn't have enough players sometimes, and like my dad would play, and he'd just almost stand in like a 5-yard box and literally not move. But he obviously wouldn't try and score any goals. He'd just get the ball and he'd take a touch, and then he'd just look to lay it off to whoever was making a run in around him. And that's a bit like what Lacazette was, playing inside like a larger space than a square 5 yards. But, yes, he could do that bit, but he couldn't give you the other side of it. He couldn't then spin off, get in the box and finish. I mean, the goal that we scored against Sevilla at the weekend, I think it was the second goal. Lacazette wouldn't pop up on the left-hand side in the way Jesus does. Bring the ball down on his chest, play it inside, and then dart into the box and ultimately be the one that ends up scoring from the edge of the 6-yard box. It's another level, and we didn't have that before. And I agree with you that, in Jesus, we've got much more threat. And listen, I'm wary of putting too much on him, because I feel like we've, partly because of his name as well, but we've kind of almost like made him out to be a messiah, no pun intended. And there's a lot of other variables that could impact him as well that we have to be wary of. I agree with you on Martinelli. That's the one I would have gone for as well. I think that Saliba is someone I'm looking at to come in and impress. I think that I'm looking at Martin Odegaard to take it up to another level this season.
Yeah.
I'm looking at Saka to continue his development. I do think it's a big season for Emile Smith Rowe. No questions about his talent, but there is questions about his ability to stay fit. What do you think the season holds for him? Because I think at the moment, he's not in the starting 11. And that's in stark contrast to the beginning of last season, when he'd just been given the number 10 shirt and was very much a part of Mikel Arteta's plans week in, week out. What do you think the future holds for him?
You know what? If there's any player I'm a bit worried about, it's him, because he lost his place last season, and that was with him coming on and scoring off the bench 3 games in a row, and he still wasn't starting the next game. So if you're making that sort of impact, I think there's something in training that Arteta is seeing from him that is meaning that he's not starting the next game, because you can't do anything else in the games. You come on and you score a goal.
Yeah.
There's not much more. So there's something that Arteta is seeing behind the scenes, whether that's fitness, whether that's sharpness, whether that's, a niggling injury, whatever it is. I just think he's not quite at Martinelli's level fitness wise. I think he's there skill wise. I think he's a great carrier of the ball. And even though he's not as fast as Martinelli, I think the way that he travels is, just as impactful. But I think it's that sort of level of energy and because like the pressing is the most important thing about this Arsenal team now. Like that is what creates us chances. And we've seen that in the games against Chelsea and Sevilla, especially. That press is so organized, so fast, so intense. I think Martinelli does that better, and that's why he's playing. And yeah, I mean, Emile Smith Rowe's injuries worry me because, I'm not sure if I see him as a winger, Harry, either. I think he's a number 10, and we don't play with a number 10. So my my initial instinct is to say that I think he'll be repositioned as a number 8. But it's whether he can add that sort of deftness to his game that position requires. Because I think if you're looking at a number 8, I think I always look at the type of player that I want that to be is someone like Bernardo Silva, someone like David Silva, someone like Santi Cazorla, where, you know, they've got low center of gravity, can put in a shift defensively as well, and have that creative spark. And I don't think Smith Rowe has that just yet. And I think that's why they've signed Fabio Vieira. But it'll be interesting to see what happens with him. But yeah, just because I'm not sure really, but what do you think his best position is right now?
I think he was effective from the left last season. I really do, but in a different way to Gabriel Martinelli. I think they give you something slightly different, and that's why I like having both of them in the squad. So I'll give you an example of what I mean. I think when the game is going to be stretched, I think when you're looking to tuck your fullback into midfield the way that we do with Zinchenko, I think you need a Martinelli because his starting position is so much wider. And as an outlet, he is somebody that you could knock the ball over to diagonally, whether that be from Ramsdale, from Ben White, whatever. And you can set him running at people and trying to get him behind. When you come up against a side that sit with a low block and almost camp on the edge of their penalty area, the space for Gabriel Martinelli to run in behind, which I think is what he's most effective at, becomes more limited. And it becomes more difficult to set him free of the defense and get him into the areas that he wants to be in. So attacking that byline, cutting the ball back. I think credit to Martinelli. I think he's become a lot more composed in those situations and a lot less selfish. You know, I thought there was a good example of that at the weekend where I think it was Jesus' second goal where he put the ball into the box. You can see how early he looked up, spotted the run and delivered the pass. In the past, Martinelli would have just been head down, let me get to the edge of the box and get a shot off.
Yeah.
So I think we're seeing that maturity, but I think Smith Rowe's got a little bit more guile. I think Smith Rowe's got a little bit more football intelligence. I think Smith Rowe is a little bit cuter in the way he does things and is more likely to almost give you one deft touch that could open up a defense as opposed to driving at someone. I agree with what you say. I think he does it in a very different way. I think you need both of those options. I really, really do. And I think there are games that suit one and there are games that suit the other. And I think we're going to see, if Emile Smith Rowe does stay fit, the interchanging of those two quite frequently based on the opponent. So I think, they're both useful players, but offer something different for me.
Let me ask you this. So obviously I think it is clear, like from all the reports and stuff, that we still do want a wide forward or like a versatile attacker. And it's, you know, Edu's spoken about it. They did sort of go in for Rafinha. Why do you think they wanted Rafinha then? Because what was the plan in terms of all the forwards?
Honestly, don't know. I don't know if they think there's a good chance of moving Pepe on. I don't know if they looked at that forward line, looked at their wide options and thought Emile Smith Rowe still relatively inexperienced, Gabriel Martinelli still relatively inexperienced, Bukayo Saka quite experienced for his age, but still not exactly experienced in terms of his age. I wonder if they looked at that front line and went, maybe we're taking a bit of a punt and a bit of a gamble on relying on all this youth to get us through. And I think actually at times, I said this to you on numerous occasions last season, we suffered from that. We suffered from the inconsistency that sometimes comes with young players in terms of their outputs. And I thought at times it left us short. I think with Rafinha, based on what Edu had to say, and again, I don't know this, I'm reading between the lines, I think that they saw a potential opportunity to do that deal and so explored that opportunity. But I don't think the interest was as concrete or was ever as advanced as maybe some outlets were reporting.
Yeah,
I think
maybe.
I believe Edu. I think the conversation was had. I think it was put back to Arsenal that he wants Barcelona, not going to happen. And that was that. And I think it was one of those classic cases where the name got put into the media. It caught fire. It spread everywhere, where everybody started getting themselves invested into the idea of Rafinha, who I think, by the way, is a superb player. I think I mentioned him when we did that same show that you mentioned, Gabriel Jesus. I'm pretty sure I put him in
I don't know about that.
Those players. No, I did. Go back and check it out.
I don't remember that, but we'll have to get someone to back check.
You better do some homework tonight. You better sit and scroll back through the Chronicles of a Gooner. He's even in the thumbnail, I'm pretty sure, so it should be easy for you to find. See. But yeah, I think that there was an exploration of that idea.
Yeah.
Maybe not any more than that, but I could be wrong. Okay. One final person I want to ask you about, William Saliba. I feel like it would be wrong of us to do a pre-season preview without talking about this guy, because there's been so much noise about him from everywhere, despite the fact that he's yet to feature in a competitive fixture, really.
Yeah, it's crazy, isn't it?
It's mad. It is mad. And the debate cropped up on numerous occasions last season. Were we right to loan him out? Should we have let him go? Should we have kept him? He's back now, and it looks as though he's staying put. It looks as though he is a part of Mikel Arteta's plans moving forward. What do you think the season holds for him? Regular starter, in and out of the side? How do you see it going for the Frenchman?
I think that I've been, first of all, like, blown away in pre-season. Like, just watching the guy, even though it is, a slower pace of game, people are getting their fitness. I think Saliba looks, different gravy, really. He just, exudes that dominance and calmness and composure that you don't see from anyone his age. And I think he's a real gem. And I think if he was to be put on the market now, I think we'd probably he'd probably go for about 50, 60 million, and we signed him for 27. So I think, we've already, if we were to sell him in the future, I think we've already made good on our investment. And that's the sort of signing that we need to make more in the future, because at the moment we're selling players that no one wants. So, whatever happens with him, we've got a valuable asset, and he is just a Rolls Royce, like, comfortable in the ball, defensively sound. But I'm not going to get too hyped yet, because I want to see him in an actual competitive environment, because he's played in Liga, which is obviously of a lower standard than the Premier League, but he's played against the likes of Mbappe and Neymar and Lionel Messi, and he's held his own. So I think he can do it, but I want to see him do it before I go too overboard and, call him, like, a future legend of the club. I want him to start against Palace, because I think he's earned it.
Oh, absolutely. I think the same 11 that started against Sevilla plays against Palace.
100%.
Yeah. And I think they deserve to. I said this was the final thing. I just want to ask you one more, because I did put this on the list that I WhatsApped you, but I missed it on my notes here. Surprise package of the season. Who do you think is going to come in and almost, I'm not going to say exceed the levels that we think they're capable of, because that feeds into kind of the breakthrough category that we did. But who do you expect to come in and basically shut people up? Who do you think is going to come in and say to people, I'm here, I'm an Arsenal player, let's go?
Cedric Suarez. No, I'm joking. So I think my surprise is slightly different. I think I'm going to go for someone who no one really knew about, and I think that's Marquinhos. I think he's shown like promising flashes in pre-season, but I don't know. I really think he's going to have a role to play in the Europa League. He's probably not second choice, but I mean, if he can get some game time in ahead of Pepe, I think we're going to see a real player. And I think, our scouting in Brazil based off some of the players that we've signed, like Martinelli, is incredible. The fact we got him for 7 million, and he's probably, Jurgen Klopp is always talking about him like one of the best. That absolutely winds me up, by the way, I have to say. But he's
back off.
Yeah, shut up, man. Like, don't talk about our players, because we'd never do that. But yeah, he is unreal. So if Marquinhos can even live up to 50% of what Martinelli has achieved already in his short Arsenal career, I think he'll be on to a winner. And it's interesting because it's a different profile of winger. Like, he's quite well built, isn't he? Like, he's not the sort of...
He's a tank. The guy's a tank.
He's not like the sort of archetypal, skinny, tricky, fast. he's just a different profile, and it really excites me. He's another lefty as well, which, aesthetically I like to see, and I really think he's going to have a role to play in the Europa League.
Yeah, I didn't really think about Marquinhos when I was kind of thinking about this. Obviously, I was looking at the players that come in. There was a part of me when we signed Marquinhos that thought we might just loan him out straight away.
Yeah.
And the longer the summer goes on, and the fact that we haven't done it yet, you can't rule it out. There's still time to go. But I don't know, man. I'll be surprised if he's in and around the squad. Not if he's in and around the squad, but if he's as involved as maybe some people are suggesting. I don't mind him being involved, obviously, but
yeah.
Is
there a chance of him not getting a Europa League registration place?
I guess it depends on the size of the squad, doesn't it?
Yeah.
And I think this is why, I think a lot of people kind of bemoaned the fact last season that we were a little bit short in numbers by the time January ended. But I actually think it's part of the strategy not to leave yourself short, but to have a smaller group. Yeah. I think Liverpool are the perfect example of that. They built a small group, a small core group that was very engaged, very connected. And you saw in the season when they lost a couple of centre-backs and then went on to lose others later on in the season, what an impact that had. But that's part of what it takes to really embed a culture and a mindset into a group of players. You don't have those people that are walking around unhappy because they're not involved. You don't have those people who are disengaged, disenfranchised. You have solely a group of competitors who want to be in the team and feel a part of that. So I think part of the whole cultural shift involves having a smaller group. But yeah, I guess if you've got a smaller group, then you should be able to, register everyone. But that depends on what we can do, doesn't it, between now and the end of the window, in terms of outgoings. My kind of sort of not breakthrough because we've done that already, but the person I think is going to surprise everybody next season is Eddie Nketiah. I was really impressed by what I saw of him at the back end of last season. I thought he was much more dynamic. I thought he was much more confident. I thought he led the press very, very well. I thought he ran channels very, very well. I thought he showed composure in some moments where, in the past it would have eluded him. There were still some bad misses last season from Eddie Nketiah, but I think overall he matured quite a bit. And I think that he's not going to come into the team and displace Gabriel Jesus, but I think he'll be a much better deputy and a much better supporting cast member than maybe people give him credit for or gave him credit for when it was announced that he signed that new contract. But yeah, let's see how it goes. Okay, that brings us to the end of our season preview. We've discussed how many points Arsenal will finish on, where we expect them to finish in the league table. We've discussed the Europa League campaign that is yet to begin, who our player of the year is going to be, top scorer, most assists, breakthrough player. And we will revisit these at the end of next season and see how wide of the mark we were, basically. So very much looking forward to that. If you haven't done so already, please leave a like on the video. If you're listening to us on audio, please do leave us a review. Apologies that we didn't get into the chat too much tonight, but we will over the course of the week as we're building up to that big Premier League kickoff against Crystal Palace on Friday night. Spend a lot more time on Q&A. So please keep the questions coming. Keep the interaction coming. Like, subscribe. You know the drill by now. Give Mike a follow on Twitter at Mike_Stavrou. Follow the show at Chronicles_AFC. And we will be back very, very soon with more. So until next time, goodbye.
I'm Martin Tyler, and you're listening to Harry Symeou.